This is the theme of Setback and Misery. I still got it. Lead up to car crash. Select frames. And so he's untitling it. And, only writers would understand why it should be untitled. I always think I like to come at things from a title, even if it's a tentative title, something to guide my understanding. To untitle it, even though he's giving claim and ownership to it by putting the words or typing the words by Paul Sheldon, is to kind of send it out to just the unknown. It's not really giving it a purpose. Everything behind it might be purposeful, but it needs a title. And later, when he has to when Annie sort of rescues him and she wants to read the new book that's in his leather briefcase, she asks, what's your book about? What's the title? And he says he doesn't know. I don't know what it's really about. Which is interesting for a person who wants to go into serious work and he doesn't know what the title is. He doesn't know what the book is about. So he was typing for 6 weeks for no good reason, right? And so then he gives her permission to maybe come up with a title, or maybe you tell me what you think the book is about. And that's, to me, beyond the fact that his car drives off the road as being possibly the first setback, I think the fact that he gives her permission to title his book that he wrote and to tell him what the book is about is a major setback for him. And we'll see that throughout the book. Throughout this film analysis. But it's interesting that this is a person who says he wants to do more serious work, but he doesn't have a title. Or this is a person who says he wants to do more serious work, but he's asking someone else what the book is about. And so to me, that is a major setback. So this is his leather briefcase that he holds, that he keeps as for sentimental reasons. And he's going to talk to his agent and talk about how when he had written his first book and he was trying to shop it around, he would carry it in this this leather briefcase. So he's putting his novel, the manuscript, into this protected briefcase. It's worn, of course, but it's hard to get rid of something that you felt brought you good luck. But he cares enough. He may not know what it's about. He cares enough to protect it, however. And so then now we know the purpose of why he had the cigarette and the match. And we find out later with his character development that he has quit smoking. But when he finishes a novel, he will smoke a cigarette, drink some wine, and then, of course, go forward with the novel. So this is the feeling of completing something. He set the task to come to this cabin and write the novel, even if he isn't quite sure what the novel is going to be about. He set the task to do it, endured the task, and then completed it. So now this is kind of like his reward. And you see the feeling that comes over him, this kind of like exhale. And so again, at the end of that manuscript is really the beginning of what he wants to move forward in and accomplish. And so now he's put the leather briefcase into the car, in the front seat, because anything that is of value, you want to look at, you want to touch, you want to see it. And then outside of the car, he sort of cleans off the snow and of course, in this particular part of the country is going to be heavy snow. This is in Colorado. And then he throws a snowball as if, what people do. It's kind of like, again, it's that sort of need to stroke your own ego, right? And then he hits his target and he hits the tree. And after that, he says he still got it, right? So that means that even if he's changing careers in terms of his writing profession and he's changing from one series or type of genre to another, he still has it. He still has the chops. He still has the writing chops. He still has the writing capacity. He still has the writing talent. I'm still bothered by the idea that he doesn't know what the book is about and that he's been typing that book for 6 weeks in a cabin. But we have to take him at his word that he still got it. So now he's driving on the road from that cabin, getting ready to leave that town. And of course, we look at this, we get an image of this, and we wonder about the snow. Immediately, we wonder about the snow. We don't think to ourselves, is it really good for us to be on the road? We just think about the fact that there's snow on the ground, and it may not be good for us to be on the road. Then we have the title of the movie, Misery. This is James Caan as the actor. So there's nothing in him that basically says that there is anything wrong for me to be driving on this road. He's driving with not a lot of speed, but with some speed, which is kind of like a warning, because if you're on a road that is snow and it's cold in the area, it also might have ice. And so there's nothing in him that's kind of reluctant about leaving on the snow. He could have easily waited a few days. The time that he was with Annie, or she had him at her house, I think about 2 days had passed and it began to thaw. And so that would have been a much better deal for him than to leave on the road. And then he wouldn't have driven off the road. So this is him. I always tend to like these side angles that, directors often present to the audience, because it tells a lot about the person's profile, of course, but it tells a lot about what the person is thinking in a car. I like the front of the car as well, their front face. So here, this is a person who doesn't think there's anything wrong other than the fact that he's finished his task. He's not expecting any issues beyond that. He's not expecting a setback. He's not expecting to not get to his destination. Why else would he be in a car? And so we have Kathy Bates in the front of the car, who's Annie Wilkes. And we really get a good view of how snowy it is and how bad the road looks and how bad the area looks. And we're wanting to sort of yell at him to turn around and go back and wait until it thaws out. So it's almost like we're looking for him to have a setback, because without even the music playing at the beginning of the movie, we see him and we are cautious for him that he needs to slow down, maybe pull off to the side of the road, turn around and go back. And then the snow begins to come down, and which is interesting because he had the lodge manager at his disposal. Even if he didn't have a TV in the room for whatever reason, especially if you are a writer and you're trying to get something done, you don't want that TV playing or anything that can distract you. The fact that he didn't ask the lodge manager, how is the weather, or get a weather report or something like that, tells you that he's operating without a firm knowledge of the area. We don't know. We know that he comes to this area to write. Annie Wilkes reveals that. The lodge manager reveals that, I think. And we know that he comes to the area. Those times that he comes to the area might not have been cold times. They might have been summer times. There might have been non sort of weather wintry times. But this tells us, and the fact that Rob Reiner didn't show him asking the lodge manager about the weather report suggests to us that he's working with a lack of knowledge about a particular area, right? Especially if he wanted to write about this area. You don't know that in a snowy area, in a snowy state, that snow is going to come down. And so his face looks very surprised. And why should his face be surprised if he is familiar with the area during this time? That tells us that he is not. And so that fact that there is a lack of knowledge on his part is part of a setback as well, or it sets him back. And so it gets even worse, right? To the point that we can't even see his the outline. Well, we see the outlining of his face, but we no longer see his nose, his eyes, or his mouth. And so we can see his ears, but that's not enough to tell us really what's how he is perceiving the fact that even more snow is coming down. And again, there's nothing in him that tells him, let me pull off to the side of the road. Let me slow down, wait this out, let this pass, and then go forward. And, you know, in some ways, that's kind of like a parallel to the misery writing business, that you have so many readers and fans who love that misery business, those books, and to shut it down and let misery die in the last book, instead of really, you know, gauging your audience to determine if they really want more, is his way of not sort of pulling off to the side, waiting till it pass, and then going forward, right? He's kind of pushing forward into dropping one thing and getting into another without taking into consideration his audience. And so sometimes you may need to do both. You may need to pursue your other path, your secondary path, because it is of interest and it might be soul inspiring, but you don't necessarily drop your fan base, because sometimes your fan base do not move over to the next thing you are doing. And so this is him plowing ahead, not thinking clearly about the decisions he's making, especially in this moment. And so the road is getting a little tricky. His driving is getting a little tricky. He's careful to protect what's the contents of that leather briefcase, but he's not careful enough to protect himself. That unless he pull off to the side of the road, he could die. And then, of course, the novel would die along with him. And so then we have the opening credits that this is based on a novel by novel Misery by Stephen King, and there's so much you can do with that in terms of Stephen King and his writing. But we're not going to discuss the aspects of the novel. This is the aspect of the film. Later, at a later date, I might consider the novel. Again, it's getting even worse, and so it's it's so bad that we can't see the license plate. It's becoming a blizzard. At first, it was just little flakes coming down, but it is becoming a blizzard. So if we know blizzards are sort of on their own little timetable, that information could have been found out listening to the radio or going to the lodge and asking the lodge manager. And so now we get this sign, this sort of road sign about it's kind of squiggly, and it's next 13 miles. It's clear here, right? So that means that this is just getting worse and worse and worse. And now the car is skidding on the road, so it's hard for him to control. But by the time it got to this part where it was hard for him to control, he had many, many, many miles of road prior to that to stop. In addition, when he was pushing the first novel for Misery, he had many rows or many years ahead to really create serious work. Instead, he plowed ahead, and it gained a fan base, and it did well financially, to the point that he didn't know it was going to do that well, and he didn't realize that he wanted to make it his life. So it's one of those things where people are just trying to make it, and they'll do anything to put something out there so they can make it. Maybe he had, financial responsibilities and trying to get a paycheck or something like that, and you realize that the thing that you created from a motivation to make it has actually been the thing that really took off. And now all of a sudden you want to do this more important stuff, but nobody really wants to hear the important stuff. They really want the misery. And so this idea of plowing ahead, despite the fact that you are going to run yourself into a ditch, in the same way professionally he was plowing ahead to the point that he felt like he was running himself into a ditch writing the Misery series, is an indication that he did not think through the first initial goal. That if he wanted to write more serious work, then he should have started out writing more serious work, or did both at the same time. And so it's almost like he has a problem with his fans loving the fact that he did well with Misery. And so this is kind of interesting that there's this plowing ahead. So he ends up running off the road, and he's going to crash. And this is the turned over car that has crashed. And there are many implications here about this crash. If he decides to leave the Misery writing business, he could crash. The reason why I believe he does well at the end of the film, and the fact that he wrote a serious work and then it gained a lot of praise, I think it's because of the experiences with Annie Wilkes. But had he not gone through those experiences and just got home to New York and wrote serious work and just completely abandoned that book or that novel series, which is his mastery orientation, if he had abandoned that, I'm not quite sure he would have been received well, because people know you by what you've already been doing. So this crash is interesting. So here's another view of the crash, and we see just how bad it is. That's something that you have to think about. You have to not only protect your product, but you got to protect yourself. At the end of the film, he's walking with a limp. Now, that's not due to necessarily the crash, even though his legs are damaged due to the crash. That's due to the added extreme option that Annie does in sort of taking a sledgehammer to his ankles, right, to keep him from leaving. But this angle tells you so much that why in the world did he get on the road, right? So this is his major setback here, that he started out with a goal to write more serious work, and now it has transitioned into a setback. All right, like, subscribe, and visit. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for more discussions. You can visit my YouTube channel for further film analysis. It's Favorites Film Analysis as the title of the channel. You can always send me an email and ask me a question, reginayfavorites@yahoo.com. My Overcoming Setback, 5 Keys for Entering and Exiting Correction book will become available around October 2021. I'm still doing some editing. The book does not focus on film analyses, but I use the content that I created for the book to support my my perceptions of setback used as a theme in select films. So when the book becomes available, I will send out a notification, video, audio. Thank you very much for visiting the channel.